Hey everybody, welcome back to another breakdown of some of the concepts that I talk about in relation to my analytics of GameStop stock. Today we're going to be talking about the importance of market maker hedging and why understanding how it works is necessary for coming up with a more accurate forecast and more accurate understanding of what goes on a day-to-day basis the daily price action of any stock. So first off, I want to say thank you so much to everybody who's come out in support of me recently after my unexpected Reddit banning and the deletion of all my content from Reddit. I want to thank you so much for all your support and for everybody coming on over to X and to my YouTube channels. I understand, right? There might be a lot of new people who haven't been with me, who haven't been with us, weren't with us over on Superstock on Reddit for the past 6 months, the duration of which I've been publishing my daily analytics on GameStop. So I want to take some time today to point out some of the key older articles that I published over the past few months and how that's going to relate to the concept I want to talk about today, namely understanding market maker hedging. So the first article I want to bring your attention to, I'm going to pin this on my X page so that you can take a look at it today, tomorrow, perhaps before I get my Monday analytics out and pin that to the homepage. So definitely take a look at this. It's here to the right of my screen, right? It's titled, "I'm tired of this. Roaring Kitty is not a market manipulator." It's a long article. I think it's one of the longest things I've published as a part of this 6 months of research, but it basically outlines the full extent of my particular model that I use when trying to anticipate price movements, what I think is going on, what Roaring Kitty is trying to do in relation to my functional model of how price action works on GameStop and in the broader market in general. So you can find that in really great detail there. I definitely recommend taking a look at it to get really a broad sense of what I'm talking about. So if we let's go ahead and take a look at this a bit more in detail. So in order to understand market maker hedging, I would like to bring up in particular this one image here. It's from The Big Short, if you guys remember this particular scene with Richard Thaler and Selena Gomez, right? They talk about, they explain the concept of a derivatives market. Okay, so what's the fundamental claim here? Why would I reference a derivatives market? Okay, the fundamental claim is this: price action on a day-to-day basis is driven primarily by the derivatives market. In particular, it's primarily driven by the options market, options being contracts of future sale or future purchase with respect to a particular stock. So options contracts draw their value from what's called the underlying, so a particular security. Options contracts on GameStop draw their value from GameStop and its particular realized value, its intrinsic value in terms of US dollars, and its potential future value, its extrinsic value. So this is packed into an options contract. These are the two types of values that are used in correlation to another a series of metrics represented by real and fake Greek letters, usually called the Greeks, which is packed into an options pricing model. If you want to check out the history of this model and the history of options contracts, I recommend a video by Veritasium on the history of it and on the pioneering of the Black-Scholes formula, which is the primary model by which market makers, that is institutions who make options contracts available, use to dynamically price these models. I'll link the video down below. It's also on my Twitter. Okay, so why does this casino image from The Big Short matter, right? So you'll remember from this scene, Richard Thaler and Selena Gomez are seated at a table in a casino, right? And they're playing a game. And what you see behind them is you see all of these people who are making subsequent bets on their game, right, on their particular bet. And so you have this network of extending derivative bets of that initial bet that's going on, right? The real game is what Selena Gomez is playing, but everybody else is playing these sub games that are linked to the game that Selena Gomez is playing. Now, while Selena Gomez is still playing her game, while she keeps playing, everybody else can keep playing their games. It's fine. The whole thing stays afloat. But as soon as Selena Gomez's game fails, all of the other games basically have to come to a stop. The whole thing blows up, right? So all of those people who are playing those derivative games have an interest in making sure that Selena Gomez's game gets played in a balanced way so that she doesn't go, right, she doesn't win too much, she doesn't lose too much, because if she does, then all of the other games kind of get blown up, right? All of this gets thrown out of proportion, it gets thrown out of balance. And the people, let's say, who run the casino, who facilitate all these games, would stand to lose a lot of money. Okay, so in this particular analogy, in talking about what goes on with GameStop day every day, we have a series of market participants called market makers. So a market maker is somebody who facilitates the options market and all transactions that take place within it, right? They take a small cut, they charge fees. Your brokerage participates in this in relation to a designated market maker. Right, there's a special role called a designated market maker. And a designated market maker is somebody who ensures liquidity within that market structure, within that sort of, in the context of that game. So they ensure that when you go out to sell a contract, right, they ensure that transactions can take place. And the way that they do that is by selling and hedging bets where they are the counterparty to whatever particular contracts or whatever particular bets the actual market participants are making, right? So it works something like this, right? You might think, oh, I'll go out, I'll purchase an options contract, I'll purchase a contract of future sale, I'll open this, right? I'll buy to open, I'll sell to open, something like that. You might think that you're being paired with another trader. You might think you're being paired with a retail buyer who is just kind of doing a one-directional bet, thinking, okay, I'll get a long call, it's going to go my way, right? You might think that that's what's going on, and that it's not that that doesn't happen, but the vast majority of all options transactions actually take place between a retail trader, somebody who's out there in the market, who's playing this game, and the market makers themselves. Okay, so designated market makers are the primary counterparty in 90% of the options transactions that take place. All right, so you'd say, well, whoa, isn't that super risky? Like, options have this potential to get you spectacular gains, but they also have the potential to go to absolute zero, right? Like they could lose a lot of money if they do this right. That's right, they could lose a lot of money. But the way that they account for this is by practicing dynamic hedging on a day-to-day basis while the market is open. So very simply, whenever you go and sell an options contract or buy an options contract, the market maker acts as the counterparty. That trade gets filled instantly. The contract comes into existence. You'll see this shift, right? I talk about this all the time in my analytics when I talk about daily open interest changes, right? The change in open interest reflects new contracts that come into existence within the structure of the options market on the daily, on our daily landscape, our daily trading landscape. Now, you might say, right, okay, but how do market makers protect themselves from this not going their way? Well, right, they practice dynamic hedging, as I said. When you go out and you buy a contract, every options contract is going to correspond ideally to 100 shares of the underlying, right? So this is why you can win spectacularly or lose spectacularly, because you have leverage with respect to your capital and the underlying. So market makers, they don't want to be out a ton of money. So their model pushes them What they practice is that they go out and they purchase shares dynamically in order to hedge their risk. So the most basic form of doing this is something called delta hedging, right? Delta measures the change in the value of an options contract in relation to a $1 change in the underlying. So once you get to something that's very, 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 very in the money, the delta change, right? The change in value of an options contract versus the underlying is 1, right? So most of the value in that options contract is called intrinsic value. Your strikes weigh in the money as your contract, as the underlying goes up $1, your contract is going up $1, right? So you're measuring the difference between the strike value of the contract and the value of the underlying. So, the delta is 1. When they're out of the money, this delta is very, very fluid, right? It varies quite a lot, especially as you get close to expiry. It's also not quite exactly 1 even when it goes in the money. If it's just barely in the money and you've got, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks to expiry, it's probably going to be around 50 or 60, something like that, depending on what what the vega on the contract is, so the implied volatility. Right, it can vary quite a bit. I won't get into the weeds here. But right, so market makers want to make sure that they are protected against fluctuations in the delta value of this contract, right? They sell contracts and hedge their delta risk such that they are always covered, right? They are delta neutral. It means that if you go and you buy a call, the market maker becomes a short party, right? They are short your options contract. So they go and they buy shares to make sure that their short contract and their short contract is hedged against long shares of the company, of the underlying, in proportion to the delta value of that contract. Okay. They also go out and they hedge with respect to the gamma value of that contract. So gamma is a second order derivative. It is a derivative of delta, meaning the delta measures the rate of change, right? It's a first order derivative of the underlying, the rate of change of the value of the underlying. Gamma measures the rate of change of the rate of change of the value of the underlying, right? So it measures the rate of change of delta with respect to an options contract. Okay, so what that means is it sort of functions like an acceleration measure. So when you get close, right, when an options contract gets close to being in the money, you'll see the most, what would I say, the most profound changes in the delta value happen just as an options contract is about to go, well, if it's a call, just as a call, let's say, is about to go in the money. And then back in reverse when it's about to go out of the money, right? So around this area, you see the most profound changes in delta. So market makers also hedge based on that gamma value, right? On how quickly the delta will change, because ideally, right, they don't want to purchase shares to hedge their position that are, say, more expensive, right? That would put them at a loss, right? They want to be buying shares at a rate of covering that reflects the rate of the appreciation of the delta value of the contract to really protect themselves maximally. Okay, so they're always remaining delta neutral so that, they don't profit, they don't lose, but they don't necessarily profit. So you might say, well, wait a second, why are they trying to be delta neutral? Why are they always trying to be neutral and have no gain? Doesn't this mean they have no gain? Do they make a ton of money off of those little fees, off of that like $1.30 per leg of, in total, like that 65 cents per leg of the contract? Well, yes, okay, that covers certain costs, but that's not actually where they make the most of their money, right? Okay. So the probability that any options contract will expire in the money is way lower than 50%, right? Okay, so the ones that are in the money, yes, the probabilities are different. The ones that are kind of at the money, around 50%, depending on how much time is left, depending on the implied volatility, right? The probabilities change. But especially as you start to go out of the money, right? The probabilities that these contracts are going to are going to end in the money, right? They're going to expire in the money, is very low. So market makers structure the options chain around each expiry to have way, way, way more out of the money strikes than strikes that are near the money, right? They could just say, all right, well, we're only going to go up $5 or $10 or something like that. But that's not what they do, right? So let's take a look, right? I'll point this out. If you might notice, let's see, let's go over to, let's bring this up. Let's bring up my brokerage here. We can take a look. Here we go. Good old Thinkorswim. Okay, so here we have our familiar options chain landscape. Let's get this full screen here so you can see this a little bit more clearly. Here we go. Okay, so right, you'll notice we've got strikes on both sides. We've got calls. We've got puts. Right, market makers put this up. We got lots of expiries. All right, let's go out. Let's take our January quarterly expiry. Right, let's see how many option strikes there are on the January expiry. Okay. Right, we've got some stuff that's in the money. Okay, right. In terms of calls, we've got stuff that's out of the money. In terms of puts, like, okay, there's a chance. Oh, GME, right, it was $10 not too long ago, right? This could something like this could happen, right? It's not impossible, something like that. But then as we look at the strikes, right, we go down, we go down, we go down. We start to get to 40, 50, 75, 100, $125, right? Okay, and we've got this priced as $80, right? You want to go buy a call for January right now for GameStop, where GameStop would have to finish. It would have to, on the 17th of January, for this contract to be profitable, to not lose money. This contract, the price of the underlying would have to be $125.80. For you to buy this now and that then to be that valuable, that's what the price of the stock would have to be. All right, now we can go, let's look at the probability that that's the case, right? Here we go. They even tell you, right? They tell you what the probability is right now. The probability that a $125 call will expire at a price greater than $125 right now is a 99.98% chance. Excuse me, is a 0.02% chance, right? The probability that this is going to expire totally worthless is 99.98%. 99.98%. Okay, now let's look at the open interest and see how many people have actually taken this bet. Let's go take a look. 63,000 contracts have been sold at this strike. 63,000. That means 63,000 people, or not 63,000 people, but there are 63,000, more than 63,000 individual bets that have been made that where the counterparty, right, the short party, has a 99.98% chance of winning. And the party that opened the contract, let's say they opened it long, right? The long party for this call has a 0.02% chance of walking away, not even with any money, right? A 0.02% chance of having the contract be worth at least $1, right? To have the difference between the share price and the strike price of the contract be at least 1 cent. Okay, so that's a tremendous advantage to the person who is selling those contracts, right? And that's true of how many of these strikes that are way up here, right? Okay, so my purpose of going into detail of pointing this out is that market makers are heavily incentivized to run this market because the chances that most of the things that they sell will expire worthless are extremely high. They're extremely high. This is a winning bet if you are a market maker. This is a privilege. This is easy money most of the time. Yes, you can fail spectacularly, but as a result, you will notice that there are some manipulative things that tend to happen, right? We talk about things like Max Payne, which is the calculated maximum profitability point for a market maker, right? Assuming that market makers are the counterparty in, let's say, 90% of the trades that take place in the options market, their profitability point, right? So last week it was on Friday it was $27 for the December 6th expiry, right? So it meant that they had to deliver on all calls, right? They had to deliver the share obligations of all calls. Basically, right, we expired just above 29. So at $29, oh no, but after hours we went down. So the 29s were worthless. So at 28.50 and below, they had to deliver shares on those, and they had to deliver on their obligations for puts at $29 and up. Okay. But it means that for every call all the way up the chain here, right, which was, I mean, we're talking tens of thousands. What? How many calls are open? Like over 100,000. They're total extant calls. So like 80,000 of those calls expired worthless. And 90% of that premium that was spent on those calls went into the pocket of market makers. Okay. So with this much money on the line, right, you can understand why market makers, if they can get away with it, might take an active role in trying to control the price where appropriate to benefit them, right? Okay. So with that being said, right, you will notice, if we take a look at our chart here, you will notice that our price tends to behave in certain ways around key options levels. So I talked a lot about this on Friday, right? Market makers have different strikes. The accumulation of certain contracts around certain strikes affects market makers' hedging behavior in some certain ways, right? They say, they have to account for a certain number of shares at certain places in a certain direction. I've talked about this a bit. I won't get into it too much, right? But you'll notice that throughout the day, these key options levels affect what happens with the price as market makers are selling or buying hedges to cover the likelihood of their total options exposure going in the money. So their delta exposure, to cover their delta exposure, to cover their changes in gamma exposure as well. So this is this basic concept. Like I don't necessarily, right, I don't want this video to get too long. Like, I mean, I like to talk about stuff. I like to sort of get out what's in my head because I'm usually sitting putting this on paper. It's definitely more structured in that particular context. But I hope I've done a good job of basically illustrating the properties at play here. There's definitely more on this article, again, that I published back on, I think I published it September 8th. It's on my Twitter. It's going to be pinned all day today. So take a look at it. Take a look especially at that section of market maker hedging. It's probably a lot more organized, although kind of less colloquial than what I just unfolded here. So if you want to go back and check out that in deeper detail, then do so. But right, every day in my analytics, I actively analyze using options data, market maker hedging behavior, and then attempt to predict what types of price movements we will see in intraday, what is likely to happen, what's not likely to happen, right, based on this pre-market data. Right? It always changes dynamically in the middle of the day, right? You don't know for certain, but it's more or less reliable. Certainly, it's more reliable earlier in the day, later in the day, not as much, depending on the total options market activity. So, but this is a central concept, right? If you're going into the trading day and you think that everything that's happening is just sort of organic, retail traders and whatnot, sort of going, hello, I'd like to buy this many shares. Okay, I'll buy this many shares. No, most of what is happening is market makers, major institutions, hedge funds, whoever is responsible for this large volume of options transactions facilitating these trades, they are dynamically hedging their positions by buying and selling shares. That's really what drives the price around on a regular basis. So if you have any questions, if you want me to go into any more detail or any more depth with some of this, if you take a look at the article that I reposted and you have some particular questions there, let me know in the comments, right? I want to make sure that I go into deeper detail in some areas that I talk about that might not be so clear. So please let me know in the comments. Please, like, subscribe, support, send this to somebody who you think could benefit from knowing this. Send this certainly to every GameStop investor that you know. And yeah, I'll look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. We got new article, new daily analytics price forecast coming out before market open. You can find that in its written form first on X, which I always link here in my videos here or on YouTube. So yeah, and then we'll have our daily analytics breakdown will be coming out shortly after that. So look forward to seeing you guys then. Thanks very much. And yeah, see you tomorrow.